Welcome back to Dulce Aroma. Today we're going to be making a really amazing, beautiful pink rose soap using a hot process. So hot processes are not that common. People don't do them probably as often as they could. I think a lot of people are scared away because the texture is completely different to cold process, and it can be a little bit more difficult to make the soap look as organized as cold process can be. But don't expect it to be the same. It's not the same. There's pros and cons to both of them. I personally love this process because you don't have to wait the 4 weeks or 6 weeks for the soap to be ready. You cook your soap in a slow cooker or a crock pot. So this is what it looks like, and it takes about an hour to cook. We'll go through the steps so you know exactly how your soap should be cooking. Before we start, any saponification process needs safety equipment. We're using a sodium hydroxide, which is very alkaline. So you need to make sure that you're protecting your eyes from the fumes. We use these safety goggles with the rubbers when we are mixing the lye and the water solution. After you've done that, you can just wear normal safety glasses because you don't really need any protection from the fumes after that. We recommend the use of gloves and long sleeves and a face mask. Try to avoid breathing it in. It's not the best to breathe in. If you can do the water and lye mixture outside, that's ideal, or otherwise just keep your space really well ventilated and make sure that you don't have any children or pets around. That's ideal. But yeah, this is a process that you can totally do. Don't be scared of it. As long as you're super cautious, you'll be totally fine. Awesome. Take a screenshot of these ingredients because unfortunately they're not going to be in my description. Anyway, so we've got 227 grams of coconut oil, 142 grams of sunflower oil, 283 grams of extra virgin olive oil, or you can use refined olive oil, then you don't have to use the white powder probably because it won't be yellow, 301 grams of distilled water, 111 grams of sodium hydroxide, 143 grams of castor oil, 20 grams of pink mica powder, 30 grams of pink rose fragrance oil, and the white iron oxide. Cool. So as you can see, we're mixing the lye solution outside. It's ventilated. We're not around any pets or kids. This heats up pretty hot. Unlike with a cold process, you don't really have to be aware of the temperature because you're cooking this anyway. We still like to set this aside for half an hour and let it cool down a little bit until the lye mixture is transparent. And then you can use it just to make sure that all the crystals are dissolved into the water properly. Cool. So here we've melted our coconut oil and it's in the crock pot at like a medium setting. Hot's fine too. Cool. And we add the rest of our oils so they're nice and warm. And we like to sieve the lime mixture in just in case any crystals get through. I mean, it doesn't often happen, especially if you've set it aside. The crystals will probably have diluted into the water and it'll be fine. But just to be cautious, you know, it's better to be safe than sorry. We use the sieve. Cool. Give it a stir for a while and you'll see it's starting to go cloudy. That's saponification, which is basically soap. That is the beginning of the soap process. If you use a stick blender, it's a lot faster. You'll be blending this forever if you're just doing with a spoon. Cool. I recommend that you use like stainless steel equipment when you're doing this just because it doesn't really wreck your tools. This process can wreck your wooden spoons and stuff. Anyway, so this is the iron oxide. As I said before, we use extra virgin olive oil, which tends to go a little bit yellow. So if you use a white colorant, it will ensure that your soap is as pale as you want it to be. But yeah, you can totally opt that out if you're keen to have a slightly yellower tinge. Put it in the crock pot, set it aside for about 15 minutes. And yeah, don't lift the lid up too much, but we will to show you the process. This is step 1. This looks like a pudding. It looks delicious. Don't be tempted, it's not food. Anyway, so this is the first stage and you'll see it's a little bit custardy. put the lid on it, let it sit for a little bit. If you give it a stir, you'll see that it starts to look a little bit like maybe cottage cheese, like milk that's starting to curdle, and that is totally normal. Like I said, this process is not the same to cold process, so it's not going to be smooth, it's not going to be liquid, it's going to be a little bit chunky, and that's totally fine. It'll compress and it will set really nicely. The day after, it will look really beautiful. Set it aside. Here's the next step. So you'll see now that it's starting to separate a little bit, and you'll be able to see oils kind of separating. This is exactly what you want. Don't be afraid, don't be frightened. This is totally normal. And this starts kind of like a Vaseline stage. It'll start to go a little bit translucent. When it does, you know that it's ready. Make sure that you keep an eye on this the whole time though. Don't leave it alone. It can boil over, or it can overcook. So just make sure that you keep an eye on it the whole time and give it a stir every once in a while just to check how the consistency is doing. So if you can see it now, it's starting to go a little bit more translucent. That's exactly what we want. Cool, so we did a pH test. You just buy these little strips. You can buy them in pharmacies and stuff. We'll make a video on how to test the soaps properly using these. But as you can see, this is probably about a 13 on the pH scale. It's still very alkaline. So if it is very alkaline, just let it cook for a bit longer, maybe another half hour, and test it again. So here we've set it aside and now we're testing it again. And as you can see, it's greener. Still not very light green, but it's way closer to what it should be. So it's probably in between an 8 or a 9, which is good. That's pretty much what we want for our skin. Between a 7 or an 8 is totally fine. I mean, even up to 9 is fine. So we're dividing it in half, or maybe just under half for this pink part. And as you can see, it's that beautiful translucent color. And here we've diluted mica with a little bit of oil. That tends to help the process just because then you won't have little clumps of mica powder. Cool, so give it a good stir. You can use a blender for this too, but it will harden really fast. And we're adding the fragrance, a little bit more color because it was a bit pale. Don't forget to be generous with your fragrances. If you're not, they will evaporate and your soap unfortunately won't have a very strong aroma. So don't go too light-handed on the fragrance if you can. Cool. Here we've added fragrance to the main mix as well. And we're doing one final pH test. And it's very green, so we were happy with this. And so now we can put it in the mold. Sweet, so we're starting off with the pink layer. And as you can see, this does not look anything like cold process. It's, I don't really know how I'll explain it. Very, very lumpy, lumpy pudding. But that's fine. This is exactly what you want. Don't be alarmed if this is what you see. It will set really well. Tomorrow it'll be a beautiful solid block. Tap it down really well because otherwise you can be left with some air bubbles. Cool. Scrape the bowl. And now we're going to add the white half. Of course you can be creative with this, do as many layers as you want, change it up, but this is, yeah, our general go-to. I feel like this looks like a little bit more like a cake with icing. So yeah, I like the icing part on top. I think it looks really cute. Cool, smoothing it out as much as you can, but it's also not going to be super, super smooth on top because the consistency is a little bit chunky, and that's totally fine. I like the fact that this looks very homemade, handmade. It looks very artisanal, and it looks like a pudding. So many people that see this soap of ours think that it looks like cake. So that's cool. Sweet, so move it around with a stick if you like. We're doing like a little wave in the middle, which is how I like to decorate soaps a lot of the time. And we're going to be putting little embeds in the middle. A spoon is probably an easier option than a chopstick or a skewer just because it is quite lumpy mix. A lot of people that make soap with a hot process use the soap the next day. We tend to recommend that people wait probably about 2 weeks just to ensure that your soap actually lasts longer in the shower, because often the humidity can just make your soap dissolve really quickly. So here we're adding our little embeds of soap flowers that we had already made. I think that they look really cute. So we've got a slightly darker pink in the middle, and we'll do a paler pink to the side. And we'll also be decorating with some little hearts. So we've got some white and some gold hearts. Yeah. These videos are sped up. Usually it takes us quite a while to do all of this decorating. And we're finishing off with a little bit of mica, just dusting it on top just to make it look a little bit glittery. The mica that we use is a metallic finished mica, so it tends to look like glitter. But you can also get like food glitter, I think it's called bio glitter, for soap making as well, if that's something that you're interested in decorating with. I'm sure your soap supplier will have some. Cool, so this is pretty much what the soap is going to look like. It probably won't change too much in colour because it's been cooking already. And this is all the foam that we had when we were cleaning the crock pot. So this is a very foamy, very lovely soap to use. We just want to show you that because that's pretty cool. Cool. And now, so once you've put your soap in the mold, you have to cover it up. The same as a cold process, you need to make sure that it cools down slowly. So we're putting this little grid over it just to not squish down the texture that we've done on top, and we're covering it with a towel. Set this aside for 24 hours, between 12 and 24 hours. I wouldn't rush it. Wait till the next day. And then you can come back and cut your soap. Sweet. So this is 24 hours later. As you can see, it hasn't changed a whole lot in color. Might also be the lighting though. And look at that. Ah. It's so beautiful. I love the soap. It's really popular. We sell a lot of the soap. People love it. And as you can see, obviously it's, it's not such a smooth finish like cold process, but there's just something so different about this one. I think that it's very charming. I love it. Cool. So we're going to use a little cutting tool to cut this. Generally we use knives, but this tool cuts through even the embeds, which is handy. Yeah. And you can get tools like this on Amazon or AliExpress, stuff like that. Yeah. They're pretty handy to cut, makes things a little bit easier instead of just eyeballing it. The mold that we use is a loaf mold for baking. It doesn't have a wooden box around it, which is kind of good and bad. I guess good because the shape is more like a cake, but bad in the sense that it's not rectangular like most soap molds. So just be aware that the sides are not as strong as if it was obviously in a wooden box. So if this isn't really something that you want to go for, if you want a really clean cut soap, then I recommend that you get a soap mold, a silicone mold that is inside a wooden box. Cool. So we'll set the soap aside. We're going to let it sit for 2 weeks, between 1 and 2 weeks, just to harden up a little bit. Just because we like our soaps lasting a little bit longer, but the soap is totally safe to use now. Yeah, and we think it's so cute. Look at that shape. I think it's really unique. Awesome. So this is the finished product. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. Dulce Aroma is my mom and I. So we make these videos together. We love soap making. And we hope that if you enjoyed these videos, you'll comment, like, subscribe to our channel. We put videos up quite frequently in Spanish and in English. Let us know what you want to see from us. Like I say, we'll do little tutorials on testing your soap and stuff like that. But yeah, we totally want to hear from you. Have a lovely day and we'll see you soon. See you later. Bye.